The Boston Bruins have a huge opportunity this weekend to take 4 big points from 2 very beatable teams.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans? Happy Black Friday and welcome to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Friday, November 29th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Before we get started today, looking at the Atlantic Division power rankings, looking at the Eastern Conference as a whole, and discussing how the Bruins have a huge opportunity this weekend to get 4 big points in the standings. A quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. The Bruins, of course, celebrating their centennial this weekend, 100th anniversary of their first game against Montreal on Sunday. It also happens to be my birthday, so the Bruins and I sharing a big day here on Sunday. Let's begin today's episode by breaking down the Atlantic Division power rankings, look at the Eastern Conference as a whole, and see here how the Bruins have a real positive weekend ahead, potentially, if they can make good on this opportunity. As the Bruins get ready to take on the Pittsburgh Penguins this evening, 6:30 p.m. start here on Black Friday. The Penguins sit dead last in the Eastern Conference with the worst goal differential among all 16 teams. So that's a real opportunity for the Bruins here. They have one more point than Sunday's opponent, the Montreal Canadiens, but they have a .417 point percentage and a minus 33 goal differential. Let's start first by focusing on the Atlantic Division, where Sunday's opponent is in last place. That will be the Montreal Canadiens. The Bruins will be hosting the Habs on Sunday. It's the 100th anniversary of the Bruins' first game against the Montreal Maroons in 1924. We'll touch on what's planned for those festivities later on in the show. But what you need to know about these Canadiens is they have a record of 8-11-3, 19 points in 22 games, a .432 point percentage, and a minus 21 goal differential. It's a very, very beatable team for the Boston Bruins. And we'll take a look at their numbers more closely as we preview that game later on. Ahead of Montreal is one other team in the Atlantic with a sub 500 point percentage, and that is the Ottawa Senators. They have won 2 in a row, but they're still only 10-11-1, 21 points in 22 games, .477 point percentage with a minus 1 goal differential. In 6th, we have the Detroit Red Wings. They're 500. They've won 2 in a row as well. 22 points in 22 games, a minus 11 goal differential. Now, it's very, very tight here when we get into 4th and 5th, but I have to put the Bruins in 5th, despite the fact that they have the 3rd most points in the Atlantic. They have 25 points in 24 games. However, they've played 3 more games than Tampa and 2 more games than Buffalo. So if you look at the point percentage, and let me bring up my screen here so that those of you on YouTube can follow along with me. You see here that the Bruins, when it comes to point percentage, are actually 5th in the conference, in the division. And if you couple that with the fact that they have a minus 18 goal differential, although they are 3-1 under Joe Sacco, 5-3-2 over their past 10 games overall, there's still a lot of work to do here for this team, especially to try to get that goal differential into the green, because you look at the top 4 teams, they all have positive goal differentials, and that includes the Buffalo Sabres, who are 11-10-1, a 523 point percentage. They're +3 in goal differential. Then you have the Tampa Bay Lightning, 571 point percentage, 11-8-2 record. They have a +14 goal differential. That's actually best in the Atlantic. The Florida Panthers have been struggling lately. They're only 4-6 over their last 10, but they still have a 587 point percentage and a +3 goal differential. Up top, you have the Toronto Maple Leafs, 13-7-2 record, 7-2-1 over their past 10, and they've played 9 of those games, I believe, without Austin Matthews. So you see how they've become a bit stronger and more resilient here under head coach Craig Berube. Now, if you rank the Atlantic Division teams by goal differential, the Bruins are in 7th. Only Montreal is worse at -21. Tampa, Toronto, Florida, Buffalo, your top 4 teams, followed by Ottawa, who we all know can be better, especially if Linus Ullmark finds his game. The Detroit Red Wings at -11. I don't see them as a real threat for a playoff spot, to be honest. Then Boston, and then Montreal. If we look at the at the Eastern Conference as a whole, and you rank by goal differential, there's only 2 teams worse than Boston in goal differential right now in the Eastern Conference. Montreal, who the Bruins play on Sunday, and Pittsburgh, who the Bruins play this evening. So the Bruins have to get 4 points from these 2 games. You cannot afford to drop points against teams who are that much worse than you, especially when you're off to this bad of a start. You have to take advantage of these 2 teams. The Penguins have given up 97 goals. The Canadiens have given up 83 goals. The Bruins finally got the offense going the other night against the Islanders. They have to find a way to keep that going here against the Canadiens and the Penguins. And we'll preview the Penguins game, the Canadiens game later on. If we look at the wild card situation, hey, things look pretty positive for the Bruins right now. They're not even in a wild card spot when it comes to points. 25 points, 2 back of Florida, only 3 back of Toronto. But again, you have to look at the fact that they've played 24 games, more than anybody else in the Atlantic for sure, and only 1 behind the New Jersey Devils. So if you look actually at the top 8 in terms of point percentage, the Bruins outside of the top 8. There's 3 Metro teams there: Maple Leafs, Rangers, Panthers, Lightning, Sabres, all ahead of the Bruins. So that's why it's vital, absolutely vital for the Bruins to take advantage of both Montreal and Pittsburgh here beginning tonight with that game against the Penguins. We'll preview that game here a little more as the podcast continues, but I do want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you're taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other, and I want to let you know that the Penguins and Canadiens are dead last in the NHL in terms of goals allowed per game. So again, if the Bruins are going to keep the offense going here after that outburst against the Islanders, it's a prime opportunity on home ice to get things done. And we'll preview the Penguins game specifically here as the podcast continues. As I mentioned, it's my birthday weekend, and as part of the festivities, we are going to check out the Arkells on Saturday in Kitchener, home of the Rangers of the OHL. And when I am looking to get concert tickets, the first place I look is Game Time. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The all-in pricing when toggled on means there's no surprise fees at checkout, and you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today because what time is it? It is game time. Here's a quick PSA for anyone who rents out there. If you haven't heard of Built, you're about to thank me. Earning points on rent is now a reality when you pay your rent through Built. You don't even have to check with your landlord to start earning points that you can use towards flights, hotel stays, fitness classes, and even your next rent payment. Let me break it down for you. With the seasons changing, I'm already dreaming of getting a warm weather getaway. I love using points for travel, and I'm always looking for ways to earn more to book my next flight. With Built, you can earn points for hotels and airlines every time you pay your rent. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. Join built.com. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnhl. Make sure to use that specific URL so they know that we sent you. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points on your rent payments today. As we saw earlier, the Bruins have two very winnable games on the schedule, and it's a must that they take 4 points from games against Montreal and Pittsburgh this weekend. The game today is one of 14 around the NHL. And again, the Penguins, they're coming off a win over Vancouver the other night, but they made it very difficult on themselves after going up, I believe, 5-1 and then eventually winning only by a score of 5-4. They're 3-5-2 over their past 10 games. They are allowing a league worst 3.96 goals per game. They're scoring only 2.63 goals per game. So the Bruins, who are still only 31st in goals for, even after the 6 goals the other night, have a real opportunity here to get the better of this Penguins team. Now, they do have some weapons, of course. Sidney Crosby, Erik Karlsson, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, all leading the team in scoring. But they're not very good, quite honestly. And this team can be beat. The penalty kill is ranked 15th, Pittsburgh's. The power play is ranked 13th. Boston's still 32nd on the power play, 21st on the penalty kill. But they have made some drastic improvements in that area since Joe Sacco took over as interim head coach. I mentioned Chris Letang. He does not lead the team in anything. He's only got 6 points in 21 games. But Karlsson, Crosby, Malkin, all leading the team in scoring. Their goaltending is pretty bad. .877 save percentage from Alex Nedeljkovic so far this season. .868 for Tristan Jarry. Jeremy Swayman elevated his save percentage to .888 recently. Joonas Korpisalo, who's the best among Swayman, Ullmark, and himself so far this season, which nobody would have predicted. He's got a .907 save percentage so far this season. Prior to beating Vancouver, Pittsburgh lost to Utah, Winnipeg, Tampa. They only beat San Jose in a shootout. They lost to Columbus, Detroit, Dallas before that. So again, very winnable game here tonight for the Boston Bruins, who will then take on Montreal on Sunday. And Montreal will be coming off a back-to-back as they will be in New York to take on the Rangers on Saturday afternoon. They've already lost 7-2 to the Rangers this season. The Canadiens have the 31st ranked defense in the NHL, 3.73 goals per game allowed. So the Bruins can keep things going after that outburst the other night against the Islanders with a big win here tonight against the Penguins and on Sunday against the Canadiens. Have I stressed that enough? Is it clear enough how big these two games are for the Bruins to get some positive momentum? Of course, the game on Sunday will be the culmination of the Centennial celebration. There's weekend-long festivities beginning tomorrow with alumni appearances, fan fest, a Pass the Torch showcase. A Centennial statue will be unveiled on Saturday to celebrate a century of Bruins hockey. It's in the shape of a Bruins bear, and it's the same artist who sculpted the famous Bobby Orr statue that sits in front of TD Garden. If you're going to the game on Sunday, you're expected to be in your seats by 2:45 p.m. There's going to be a huge celebration before the game, which I think isn't supposed to start till around 4:15, even though puck drop is scheduled for 3 p.m. There'll be a number of commemorations, special pregame ceremony marked with appearances from several of the team's legendary alumni, looking back at the 100-year history, immortalizing legendary moments in a time capsule at center ice, and kind of a passing of the torch to the next generation. So that will be very, very fun. And speaking of memorable Bruins moments, I myself was born in 1980. So as the podcast continues, I'm going to break down some of the top moments of my lifetime as a Boston Bruins fan, and we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. The NFL slate has already kicked off with Thanksgiving Day action, and you can get in on the rest of this week's games with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So many amazing Boston Bruins moments over the last 100 years. I've only been around for 44 of them, to reveal my age here. And there are some big moments that really stand out to me as epic in my lifetime. Now, I saw my first Bruins game in Ottawa at the Civic Center, where the Senators played prior to going to their current stadium. And I was able to see the Stanley Cup there for the first time as a youngster. And as I've explained on the podcast before, I'm an Ontario boy, but I came to love the Bruins because my dad was a huge Bobby Orr fan. Bobby Orr played for the Oshawa Generals. My dad grew up in Trenton, which is just down the highway. And you can see the Bobby Orr picture that I have signed here behind me if you're watching on YouTube. So I picked up the Bruins love from my dad. My sister was a huge Mark Messier Edmonton Oilers fan. So when the Bruins played the Oilers in the Stanley Cup final in 1990, I really leaned into my Bruins fandom just to be an annoying little brother, and it really stuck from there. And one of the biggest, best moments as a kid watching the Bruins, previously a dominant power forward in the NHL, and he reached the 50 goal mark in just 44 games during the 1993-94 season. And for me, this was just unbelievable. I could not believe that Cam Neely, not the most skilled player of all time. He's not compared to Wayne Gretzky by any stretch, but only in this achievement. And it placed him among NHL legends and highlighted his incredible skill, perseverance, despite dealing with some significant injuries. And that knee injury, leg injury, that was exacerbated by an Ulf Samuelsson hit, effectively ended his career shortly thereafter. Now, of course, 2011 was the highlight for me as a Bruins fan. I've said on the podcast before, I've shed a tear from hockey once in my life, and it was not Game 7 against Vancouver. It was Game 7 against Tampa, when David Krejci passed that puck to Nathan Horton for that 1-0 win. I was just so happy that the Bruins had made the Stanley Cup final. I actually cried a little bit. Now, that, of course, I think it was because that game was so tight. If you recall Game 7 against Vancouver, the Bruins scored early and did not allow Vancouver to score at all. Tim Thomas, legendary performance in that whole playoff run. They beat Vancouver 4-0 in Game 7. Thomas winning the Conn Smythe. Patrice Bergeron, Zdeno Chara, Brad Marchand cementing their legacies with heroic efforts in that game. Marchand, Bergeron doing the scoring. Chara shutting things down, lifting the cup. And that was just unbelievable. Now, the Bruins would make the Stanley Cup final 2 years later, of course. And to get there, they pulled off one of the most epic comebacks in NHL history. They were down 4-1 in the third period of Game 7 against the Toronto Maple Leafs. With less than 11 minutes to go, they scored 3 unanswered goals. And then Patrice Bergeron with the overtime winner to complete the comeback to advance to the second round, eventually making it to the Stanley Cup final, where they lost to the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, the run in 2019 up there as well, but that's probably one of the more disappointing parts of my Bruins fandom, is not seeing them win the cup one more time with that core that they had. There was, of course, also the 2022-23 season where they set records for wins, points. Again, that culminated in a disappointing finish, but watching that team win every single night and seeing how stacked that roster was, I still have the boys t-shirt. I just absolutely loved it. But my Bruins fandom was really cemented in the 90s. It wasn't really a successful decade for this team in terms of playoff wins and championships, but they did reach the final in 1990 with Ray Bourque, Cam Neely, strong supporting cast. Ray Bourque dominant throughout that decade as one of the best defensemen in NHL history, winning his 5th Norris Trophy in 1994. Adam Oates had an unbelievable year, 45 goals, 97 points, 97 assists in 92-93. They opened up their first game at the Fleet Center in a great all-star moment there for Ray Bourque. And then, of course, they were able to draft Joe Thornton, Sergei Samsonov, which was supposed to usher in a new era. But then we had the signings of Marc Savard and Zdeno Chara on the same day. And that really ushered in a new era for the Boston Bruins. Marc Savard's overtime goal versus the Flyers in 2010. Yes, they didn't win that year, of course, but his first game back after dealing with severe concussions, it was one of the most heartfelt moments in Bruins history, seeing him win that game in overtime, and his celebration was just unbelievable. The day when they signed Chara and Savard on the same day was unbelievable as well, and that really ushered in a new era for Bruins hockey. So those are some of my top moments of my lifetime as a Boston Bruins fan. I'm sure we will all have our memories jogged even further on Sunday when we watch the culmination of the Centennial celebrations. Hoping for a big effort from the Bruins tonight against Pittsburgh. I'll try to jump on YouTube afterwards to break down a big win, talk about the game on Sunday. We'll be back on Monday with full recaps of this weekend's action. Please do check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast next for all the tips you need to get a leg up on the competition this week. Please do take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, friends, and we'll be back on Monday with a brand new episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single